You drink the tea, you read about the tea, but how do you describe the tea? Today, perspective from an in-house tea taster. Hi everyone, this is Dimitri from Nannuoshan, dedicated to the spread of fine tea and tea culture worldwide. I'm here today, flying solo a little bit for a small tea tasting of a sample of Dian Hong that has come in our grasp. If you don't know, I do a lot of the descriptions for the product pages on the Nannuoshan websites and a lot of the other copy text around the English language versions. And so I'm generally in the position of tasting a tea and then having to put that into words to describe it for our customers, to give them an idea of what they, hopefully you, will be buying before you buy it. That's a little bit of a challenge for the sensory world of taste and smell. And I thought it'd be interesting to share a little bit about at least my process, about how I go from the raw leaves and the brewed liquor to a somewhat literary or linguistic description of what that is. And as a little teaser, at the end of the video, there'll be a little giveaway, so stay tuned to the end for that. I'll talk a little bit more about the context about what I do, but for starters, let's introduce the tea. I have here a packet of the aforementioned Dian Hong. It's just a sample that's been sent to us by one of the producers or vendors that we deal with in China. We don't have any current plans to offer it on our website. It's one of the things that sometimes we have a few samples, we taste, we consider some more, and if it seems like a good find, maybe we'll source it for the future. So here I have 3 grams of leaves. They're long and dark, with some stems attached, and there's a little bit of brown there, kind of charcoaly gray, almost slightly green in some aspects. And they look nice. They look high quality. At least to my eyes, because they're quite large. They're not hairy really at all. There's no golden tips there. So I guess whole leaves rather than buds were used. And other than that, and the price, and that it was harvested this year, it's entirely an unknown. This is relatively expensive. It would retail for about some $35 or a similar number of euro for 50 grams. So that's quite up there, parallel to some of the more expensive Dansong oolongs. But hopefully that's a mark of good quality, but we'll see. So I'm going to get started right away brewing it, and slowly give you an introduction of the general process as I do. First things first, I give I look at the leaves and I give them a nice smell. Okay, a little bit of that powdery smell, some maybe bits of tea dust or hair lingering about, and slight roastiness, but not too strong. I'm already inclined to say that there's something slightly creamy or milky in there, which is normally something that comes out in the taste more, but here it's almost a little bit like a like a nice milk tea or something that you get. Not a milky oolong. I mean, not so strong, but just a little whiff of cream. Fruit. Red fruit or stone fruit, something in that direction. But the dry leaves don't have as much smell as the wet leaves. So I have my water at, yes, 89, 90 degrees. That's a good starting temperature for black tea. And I'm going to put in this gaiwan, which has is a 100 milliliter gaiwan. So 3 grams for 100 milliliters. That's kind of our standard recommendation. Now, Gong Fu Cha, often you may do more intense, but that is kind of a good frame of reference for us to suggest brewing parameters, and then let people kind of go from there. So that's what I'm going to do. 100 milliliters, 3 grams, based on previous Dian Hongs. Now, brewing a new tea is always a little bit of a guessing game. What will work best for that? And some are very kind of stick to the book, stick to their types very much. Others are very particular, but I'm going to go with previous Dian Hong times in brew for about 45 seconds. And in this case, I'm not going to time it quite so precisely because this is not, I don't have to give the exact time in this case. So I'm just going to go for an approximate what feels to me like 45 seconds, which, knowing my sense of time, will be anywhere from 30 to a minute and a half. But that's there. So put you in. So to taste tea, it should be said that the focus of what we're doing here is one way of looking at tea, of kind of reducing it away to particular other references, to flavors, smells, textures, which is generally a game of analogies. This tastes like this smells like this. Even this has a texture of milk or juice, something, or spring water. And it's a wonderful way to look at tea. It's not the only way. So I don't want to give the impression that if you are just tasting tea completely associatively, or just having a kind of a pure sensory impression without analysis, that there's anything wrong with that, or that's or that you will only have a rich experience with this kind of analytical mindset, but it's just something to have in one's tasting toolbook, if you will. And I think it can also serve as as anything from a kind of even a bit of a meditative focus to draw one's attention to the experience, to help one identify what one likes, what one is perceiving, and to also find those teas, particularly when you do something like order online and you can't smell at least or taste the tea directly. So anyway, here's first infusion, however long that exactly was. The color is is kind of a medium, slightly golden orange. And now, before I start, I'm going to start taking notes. I usually take fairly thorough notes, most of which I don't actually use. And I generally break it down into the kind of 3 main senses, which is the sight, smell, and taste. And I'm going to sort of set up, I have a little rubric that I set up. And I kind of go one by one through each of the steps and put in the details that come. If there isn't much there to say, then that's not important. For me, most of the text that I have is a paragraph, maybe 2 small paragraphs to share, to give an impression of the tea. That and 3 tasting notes, which are kind of give a nice a good number to give a kind of arc of the shape, if you will. So I'm gonna already write down here what I noticed about the dry leaves, that they were dark, long, twisted, without buds or hair. And that the smell, there was already some aroma there. There was a little bit of cream even, and some of these things are very subjective. And the second time I try to smell something or taste something, it's gone. So that's also worth noting that. And in general, the degree of subjectivity that this has. It's never to say that everyone will have the same sensory impressions, but more to give a kind of hook to hang one's impression at a distance on, if that makes any sense. I'll continue on here writing. Red fruit, red or stone fruit, and slightly roasted. Now the next step is the wet leaves. I'm going to give them a little shake here. Sniff. Wow, very rich and full-bodied. This reminds me of a tea that I used to drink when I was young that was, I think, slightly perfumed with lychee, which wasn't a very strong perfume. I'm not sure what they did. It was a strong, very malty black tea. This one I don't think will be so malty. Something a little bit savory there, but definitely that a little bit tropical fruit almost. Put lychee down, even though it's not very certain, but also more red fruit and something vegetal and umami. That's a little bit vague, but that's okay for the moment. Umami. And looking at them, they've opened up a little bit. They look a little bit green, which is nice. Kind of like very, very dark and mostly brown, but a slight, ever so slightly greenish brown, a little bit of a tawny brown. It seems like a nice balance, and they have I'm just gonna also say subjectively a nice look. Now I already know that this is a more expensive tea, so I'm also probably biased in how much I expect out of it quality wise. It really smells nice. A nice maltiness. I think that's also there. Very mild, however, and sweet. So the first infusion, say very approximately 45 seconds, and you who are looking at can see the timestamp here will know how incorrect that is. 45 seconds, 90 degrees. On the tongue, it's sweet, mildly astringent, and thin so far. But in the aroma, there's something happening. I don't want to commit too much yet, but knowing before it's a little bit roasty. And that's probably mostly what I'm going to get from the first infusion. And so with apologies for a little bit of sort of crudity, I'm just going to kind of quaff the rest of this one, because I don't think I can get more in this case, and this is we don't want to be too exhaustive here. Ready for the second infusion. Now this one, on the basis of the first, I'm going to go 60 seconds, and probably I would wonder if I should recommend 60 seconds, if I were to recommend a brewing time in for the first infusion as well, for 3 grams. This reminds me also slightly of Red Ruby, Yu Hong, I want to say. Have to double check that, but meaning effectively ruby. The Taiwanese black tea is a relatively recent development. It has a little bit of this Concord grape flavor. To me, that's Concord grape. It's a little bit like round and fruity, fairly sweet, and but nice bit of astringency. And also, at least the one we have has a nice creamy note as well. But this is a little bit milder in most of those respects. So, yeah, as you can see, I've been breaking down the flavors into these different senses. That's also not, in the end, where a longer description comes from. And if one wants to give an impression of a tea, it's I generally go for kind of a complete sensory impression, whatever that brings. For me, for writing about it, I tend to gravitate towards whatever it brings up. If there's smell is often known as a very strong, is very strongly linked to memory as a sense, and whatever kind of associations come up from particular tastes, sometimes that just happens. When I drink a little sip of something and it brings me back to something, or at least brings me to the feeling of familiarity. And then there's a bit of an exercise of chasing down where in the memory where that was, what was going on, what was the context there, was there, what objects were at the place. That's definitely more than 60 seconds now, but it feels like a good time for a bit of a stronger brew. And that's a bit of an exercise that I've found improves with practice, going from the feeling of familiarity to finding out and fishing where that association comes from. And then for me, it's frequently a place, say the outdoors, say the deep woods, or like a mountainside with a little bit of the earthy smell, dusty earth, herbs. Maybe it's a dish, a complex food with many spices and things, or even a simple product that is very, very particular. And it's a good exercise to do to, when you have a feeling of familiarity, to try and dive down and take your time and relax and try and recall what it is. It's not always easy. Sometimes it escapes, but after a few times, I think you'll find that it gets a bit easier, or at least it's gotten easier for me. And a whole sensory impression like that is a very nice way to give an image of a tea all at once. It's like you're at a riverside and you have a little bit of this cool, this watery smell coming up. It's kind of thin, but maybe there's some grass or herbs or reeds just by the riverside, and those things are mixing together. A little bit of mud, a little bit of that. A picture. That's what I find helpful anyway. Whether now I can't say for certain whether the readers find it helpful, but I hope at least it's pretty. Second infusion now. Okay, that definitely was effective in getting it maltier, and a bit stronger. The infusion's a bit darker, closer to amber. Second infusion. I'm gonna put the malt down here now, malty, but it's still not super malty. Maltier maybe. If I haven't expressed as much, this is a really fine Dian Hong. This is very, nice and pleasant. And I don't know about you, but I would find that worth it, I think. It's that's a good yeah, that's a good, it's very balanced, full, quite aromatic, but has that kind of maltiness that's nice to have in a Chinese black tea when that's what you're in the mood for. There's also the very floral side that one can have, but seems a bit of malt is nice, and this has it with, well, also being rich and a bit brothy. I would also put that down. So what I have in front of me now is a list of adjectives, of flavors, of aromas, a few textures here, like brothy that I just mentioned, or the mildly astringent, and I have at least the beginning of general brewing parameters that I might have to adjust a second or third time to try and narrow it down to something better. And I would go on like this for, you know, as long as the tea went, and see how well it does. But I think that's kind of enough of a demonstration. From these adjectives and any of these kind of associations that I was talking about, that forms the backbone of a good way, at least for me, to create the text of the kind that is found on our product pages. For you, the viewer, maybe that's helpful in just describing tea among tea drinking friends, going into a tea shop and saying, I want a tea that kind of is like this, it has these aspects, or just enjoying the experience a little bit more by being able to have these associations. And more, there's more usage that these can have. But for now, I'm going to finish this little sip here, and then tell you that we're going to offer the rest of this sample. There's still about some, I don't know, maybe that's somewhere between 15 and 25 grams left to the first person who comments and asks for it in the comments below. That's little giveaway. So if you like a good Dien Hong, I can definitely recommend this. I would consider recommending it for purchase. It's a bit expensive. That's something we'd have to consider, see if we get the same thing. But if it's something that people are into, and if you really like a nice, balanced, good quality Dien Hong, that's something you can also write below. Let us know. And that's about it for today. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope this was interesting. And I also hope to see you again in the future. So please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content and want to be informed about future videos. And until next time.